Welcome back to Inside the Musician's Brain. I'm your host, Chris Pandolfi from the infamous Stringdusters, and I've got a huge episode lined up for you today. In just a few minutes, you're going to hear my talk with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Del McCoury. Del and I sat down this past summer when the Del McCoury Band was out here in Colorado for the Rocky Grass Festival, and we actually filmed this interview with a bunch of cameras. So you can watch the whole thing over at volume.com, and I recommend that you do because Del exudes an uncommon energy. This guy is one of a kind. This was such a fun interview. I can't wait to share it. That's coming up here in just a minute. A quick nod to my sponsors this season. Turtlebox is the best USB speaker out there. No question. Check it out. This is my Turtlebox Ranger right here. They've got their bigger flagship speaker, but they recently introduced Ranger, which is smaller, more portable. These things are rugged. They're waterproof, so you can take them with you on all your outdoor adventures. And the thing that I love the most is they sound really good. You can crank them up loud. They sound great, even this smaller speaker. So for all your USB speaker needs, check out Turtlebox. My other sponsor this season is Flylow. I love my Flylow gear. You've heard me talk about it. I wear this stuff when I'm home, working, when I'm on stage, skiing, fly fishing, you name it. And I love it because it's quality, it's functional, but it's also really stylish. The stuff looks good, and that is hard to find. Flylow was started by two Colorado natives, and the company is turning 20 years old in 2025. So for all your apparel needs, make sure you check out Flylow. Inside the Musician's Brain is also brought to you by Osiris Media. Osiris is home to all kinds of great music podcasts, including the Helping Friendly podcast. If fish is your thing, you got to check out the HF Pod. We're also brought to you by Americana Vibes. That's the infamous Stringdusters record label. And as I mentioned earlier, this season, ITMB has partnered up with Volume.com to bring you video of all the episodes from season 6 and some of the best episodes from seasons past as well. That's all going down at volume.com. We get to hear from a real legend today, a bona fide, been there, done that icon, a man who played alongside Bill Monroe, who made up bluegrass music, and who has since gone on to etch his place on the Mount Rushmore of bluegrass alongside Monroe and a handful of other luminaries who charted the musical course that so many people, myself included, are following today. The incomparable Del McCoury is my guest. So I'm going to keep it short here in the intro so we can get on to this amazing interview and hear from the man himself. What a vibe Del has. What a legend this dude is. It's truly inspiring. It's epic. It's unbelievable to be around. And I have to say, more than the music, the pedigree, the accolades, the stories, what inspired me most was simply the energy of the man himself. You feel it the second he walks in the room. If you've ever met Del, if you know Del, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Consider this. Del is 86 years old, and he's still cranking out albums, going on tour, hitting the high notes, rocking the G-Run, and putting on amazing performances everywhere he goes. And I went to the show the night of this interview at Rocky Grass, and I'm here to tell you that the Del McCoury Band and Del himself, they have not slowed down one bit. I think they've actually sped up. And it's clear when you're sitting across from him, as I was in this interview, that there is this uncommon energy, this lightness that is somehow innate and really keeps him going after all these years. Because how else do you get to 86 playing a physically demanding style of music with no compromise of quality and no sign of slowing down? This is a man who loves life. He loves the music he plays. He loves his family, who are his band, and he never seems to think too hard about any of it. And that right there is inspiration of the highest order. It really is. It comes through in this interview. You can see it, you can hear it, you can feel it. And it's clear that his attitude, his vibe, his energy is such a big part of what keeps him so vital. It's really good for you to be immersed in that energy. And Del is living proof. He walks the walk. I have to say, when we set this interview up, this was crazy. I remember thinking, does that leave enough time for Del to get ready for the concert, which was only a few hours later. And, they agreed to the time. And then Del was running late, and he's like 15 minutes late, 20 minutes late. And I'm thinking, oh boy, are we even going to get this interview in? And he rolls in, and I said, Del, I want to be respectful of your time. I want to make sure that you have enough time to get over to the show and get ready. And he sort of looked at me and chuckled and said, I don't even know what time we go on. And it really says a lot. He's always vibrating at that frequency. He really is. This is a man who has an unshakable positive attitude, and he's a really powerful reminder that attitude is everything. And your attitude is one of the few things you can control. You can't control what happens out there in life, but you can certainly practice controlling how you react to it. And if we get hung up on the things we can't control, that's when life gets out of control, and we don't need that. Life's too short. Life is hard enough. It's getting weird out there these days, and we need as much positive energy. We need as many positive attitudes as we can get. Del's son, Ronnie, is a great friend, also a legend himself. And I've heard Ronnie say that Del has never changed. He's always had that vibe. People have always gravitated toward him. And on the musical front, he's always been so open-minded, willing to play with anyone, collaborating with so many different artists. We refer to him as the unicorn because he's that rare artist who has won fans over on every part of the musical spectrum, from trad bluegrass people to progressive bluegrass people to jazz fans, music snobs, and beyond. He was cool before bluegrass was cool like it is today. He was a big part of making bluegrass cool. No doubt about that. So prepare to be inspired by Del and his uncommon energy. That energy is not just what keeps him young at 86. It's what's colored his amazing music all these years. It's the energy behind the music and the energy behind the man. They are one and the same, and that's why we love him. He's a Grammy Award winner, Grand Ole Opry member, National Heritage Fellowship recipient. The list goes on. He's got by far the best hair in bluegrass, and he's shared the stage with everyone from Bill Monroe to Fish. Ladies and gentlemen, let's jump ahead now to my conversation with the one and only Del McCoury. Here we go. All right, we're here on Inside the Musician's Brain, and my guest today is a true living legend of bluegrass music. He's got multiple Grammys, 31 IBMA awards, and countless influential albums, not to mention the most recognizable voice and G-Run you'll ever hear. Del McCoury, welcome to the podcast, man.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Good to be here with you.
This is such an honor. I can't thank you enough. And I thought I'd start out, first of all, by just telling you, what a huge inspiration you've been to me, my band, everyone who listens to and plays bluegrass. And, your music is an inspiration on its own, but here you are, 86 years young, still killing the game. In a few hours from now, you're going to be on stage at Rocky Grass, and wanted to just hear your perspective on what keeps you going, man.
Well, Chris, I still feel pretty good. I've got things that I have to now wear this monitor for. I got sometimes my sugar will drop a little bit, but that's the main thing, I think. But other than that, I feel pretty good, and I'm still interested in music, And,
that's so great.
And singing, and I don't know what I'm going to do when I start singing flat and sharp and all that stuff.
Well, we don't need to worry about that because that day has not come yet, man. Your singing is still on point. Do you still love playing and performing as much as you ever have?
Yeah, I think I do. Now, I'll tell you what, I think I might have been more excited back years ago than, about playing and get really nervous about it, At one time, I remember to go on stage with, I don't know, I don't think I could have done it. I thought in my mind.
Do you mean, was that before you were a performer?
That was sort of. I was playing music, but
okay.
But I didn't think about getting up in front of people and doing this. What? You're crazy. I ain't gonna do this in front of people.
Well, it seems like something changed because you figured out how to do it in front of people and do it really well.
It took a long time, by degrees for me to feel comfortable on stage. Now I still get nervous, before I go on. But I mean, I'm comfortable once I get out there, and talk to people a little bit,
So you get nervous, like you get the butterflies, but it's more excitement than nerves. And then once you get on stage, you kind of settle in and away you go.
Yeah, that's right. After we get through the first song, or you know how that is, that first song, if you can get through that, and then you're pretty good, you feel pretty good then.
So you said when you started performing, it was like something you couldn't even imagine doing.
Yeah, really. I mean, the reason I was playing is because I just liked the sound of it, playing. And I really didn't think about getting up there and doing it for other people, to listen to. It was just that I liked, when I heard Earl Scruggs, I thought, man, I was 11 when I heard that. And I thought, golly, I'd love to do that. Not to get up on stage and do it, just do it to watch me do it.
So what changed at some point? Did you, what was the first opportunity to play a gig then and sort of transition from just doing it for yourself to actually doing it on stage for people?
Well, I tell you what, my older brother played guitar, and I'd got pretty good with the banjo, and then I had a cousin played the mandolin, and we were raised up Baptist, and our preacher had been a singer. He had sang on the Grand Ole Opry. He was from down in North Carolina. My folks are from North Carolina, but his name was Sarrett. He was our preacher, and he was a fiery preacher, and he kind of lost his voice. He could still sing bass, so he sung bass in a quartet in church, and he had a radio show where he'd preach on the radio, and then we'd sing. We'd sing on the radio. Well, that wasn't too bad because there was nobody there watching us. But when I had to get up in front of people, that was the hardest part, I think, to do in the beginning. But it takes a while to get over that. But you get over it all.
Yeah. Well, I think you've gotten over it, Del. You seem about as comfortable on stage as any performer I've ever seen, and it's like such a big part of your act. I love that. That's really cool. And I want to go back and talk about your early days playing with Bill Monroe, but you have a new single out. You just recorded "The Times They Are a Changin'," the Bob Dylan classic, and I was curious to know why that song.
Well, I'll tell you what, that was actually recorded, I don't know, Ronnie could tell you when. It might have been 15 years ago or 20 maybe. We put out a record called, what was the name of that? Names are bad for me I can't remember names anymore. But we put out this record, and we got a lot of people to help us with it. Merle Haggard sung a song on there, and we was thinking about Middle America, and... I don't know who all we got on that. And this song was part of that. And I also had another song, and I think they already played it. But anyway, it's an old song. Ronnie's probably the one that got that song for me to do. He said, "Now, Dad, you ought to do this one. I think it would suit this record." But it's old. Actually, it's old. And I don't know why they just now put it out, but they did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that song was recorded over 60 years ago. But But the message rings true today.
Yeah.
Just like it always has.
I think that's why today that we're streaming it is because it suits the times better now than it was when I recorded it.
Yeah. That's cool. Now, you put our new record last year, Songs of Love and Life.
Yeah.
Great record. I love the song Just Because.
Do you?
Oh, so Del McCoury, so unique, and just the way the vocals unfold and your voice. But the whole record is great, and again, just such an inspiration, the music, but also the fact that you're keeping it going after all these years at such a high level. So for that record, how do you choose songs for a record like that? Because they come from a lot of different places for you.
Yeah, they do. I'll tell you, people send me songs, I'm sure they do you the same. They'll send me songs, and I'm always listening. I tell you what, during the pandemic, we were playing the Opry when we heard this. Anyway, it was March, I think, and so my manager said, we're just going to cancel all of our shows, And I thought, you know what? I have this big box of records. It's CDs mainly, and I'm going to get that box. People send it to me, and I'll just throw them in that box. And I thought, this is a good time to listen to all this stuff.
Okay.
And that, so I don't know what record I did after that, but after the pandemic, but that's what, and there was, I'm sure there was songs in that box too that it was on this record, because I'll get them out and listen again if I haven't recorded. I know I might hear something different. I think, wonder why I didn't do that, and I like that song.
Well, what do you look for in a song?
I don't know what I'm looking for really.
Okay.
Yeah, I just sometimes I'll hear a melody I like, and sometimes a story. It's hard to say. I tell you what, I did a song on that record called If You Talk in Your Sleep, Elvis, and me and my wife were in our car, and we went up to PA, visited up there and come back. It's a long drive. We'd listen to Sirius, and of course we got thinking, well, we'll turn it to somewhere else. We'll turn it to an Elvis station. And the first thing he sung was that song, and I thought, I never heard that before, and I liked it. And I told my wife, write the name of that song down.
That's great.
I'll get my daughter to find that on there. And I just like that song.
Yeah, so many records, so many iconic songs. I know the record that got me in the door was Del and the Boys.
Did it?
And I had just started playing bluegrass at that time, mid 2000s. I'd been playing for a few years, but so many great records and so much great history too. I want to go back in time because, the guys who invented bluegrass, Bill Monroe, Stanley Brothers, they're not with us anymore, but they haven't been gone that long. And bluegrass music isn't really all that old. And you're sort of our living link to the origins of this amazing music. And of course you played with Bill Monroe, 1963 into 1964. And I just wanted to start there and hear your perspective on what was Bill Monroe like? What was this guy like to be around?
Well, you know what? Bill Monroe was a man of few words. He, if you wanted information out of him, you had to dig. I've heard him do some interviews, short interviews, with people, and they'd say, Bill, do you do this and do that? Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am, That's about all he'll give him. He don't give him a story about nothing, But, and of course I'd looked up to him because I'd heard him from the time I was a kid,
Sure.
And it's funny how I got with him. I was playing in Baltimore with Jack Cook, who's an ex-bluegrass boy, and Bill come there, and he come in at a little bar we was playing, and I thought, is that Bill Monroe? It was dark in there, and I saw his big white hat. And it was Bill, and he wanted Jack to go with him to New York City.
Yeah.
Well, and Jack said, you got a banjo player with you? No. He said, well, let's take Dale because he knows all this stuff, And so I thought, well, we'll get up there and we'll rehearse, rehearse our show up. And we got up there and just tuned up and went out on stage.
No kidding.
Yeah, and that's how I met Bill Monroe, And he told me he'd like to hire me that night. He didn't have a banjo player. I like Jack, and me and him were close in age, and we were both pretty young, and I just like staying. I didn't tell him anything. He paid me, and he said, now look, if you take a notion, here's my number, and you call me up. And and come to the Clarkson Hotel and get you a room there, and I'll come and get you the next morning, and all like that. Well, eventually I did decide to do that, and me and Bill Keith got there the same day.
Yeah.
And I walked down into the, when I called Monroe up he said, now meet me in the lobby of the hotel. That old hotel's gone now. It's up on 7th Avenue. But anyway, it was right across the street from where they used to do the Opry. The Opry, I forget what that place is called now. But anyway, when I walked into the lobby, saw another guy carrying a banjo coming in the lobby.
Brad Keith.
Yeah, and I thought, I'd like to talk to that guy. And by that time, Monroe walked in, and he said, follow me, boys. So we just followed him like two little puppies,
Mm-hmm.
and he went out of the hotel and went right next door to a restaurant and went in there, and he bought our breakfast. And of course, he didn't say much, He didn't introduce us. He knew Keith and he knew me.
But did you know who Bill Keith was?
No, I had no idea.
Okay. And for those of you who are listening, for context, Bill Keith, one of the most legendary banjo players of all time, and truly on the Mount Rushmore of banjo players, the inventor of the melodic style. Yeah. So here you find yourself going to audition for Bill Monroe as a banjo player.
Yeah.
And here's Bill Keith. So what happens next?
Okay. So we ate, and he picked up our check, and he said, now follow me. And we went right next door to that place, the National Life and Accident Insurance Company building. It was a big, tall building, Well, we went in there and got on an elevator, I remember, and went up to a certain floor. And there was a room when we got off the elevator there, and I saw this brown Gibson guitar case sitting in this room just by itself over there against the wall. And come to find out it was Bill's Martin, that was in a Gibson case. And Keith told me this later on. I forgot a lot of what happened that day. But he told me, he said, now, Dale, never did call me Dale, call me Dale. Dale McCoury.
And he called Bill Keith Brad because there could only be one Bill in the band.
Yes.
So Brad and Dale are there to audition for banjo.
Yeah, both. So he said, now you get that guitar out. And I thought, wonder what's going to do this guitar. But I'd learned to play the guitar from my brother, earlier. And so I got it out, and I played with him, and Keith played the banjo, and he had me sing with him. He had me sing something. I don't know what it was. And then Keith told me this later. He said, well, now, after you did that, he had me take the guitar, and you take the banjo and play like that.
No kidding.
And he was trying to see who could do what the best. It's funny. I don't remember that. Keith told me that, though.
Wow.
And he said, and I had never played a guitar, much less sing. So.
But Monroe he wanted to see what he was dealing with.
Yeah, he wanted to see what he was dealing with. He wanted to hire us both, but he didn't know how to do it.
Okay.
And so he told me, he said, well, Dale, tell you what, I want you to play guitar and sing lead with me. And he said, you're going to like that better than that banjo you've been playing. Kind of like that, he said it, And he said, Keith, I want you to play the banjo. And he said, now I've got some studio time, and I'm going to go take you down to the Union Hall and sign you up. In that city, you couldn't play, even if you belonged to the union, which I did.
Okay.
Another union. They wouldn't recognize it. And he said, I'll sign you up so you can record with me. I've got a tune or two I want you to play, and I want to do that Sailor's Hornpipe with you, and Devil's Dream,
Bill's kind of signature early melodic banjo pieces. Yeah.
And he wanted to get that on record right away,
That's so cool.
So, yeah, I know that's what it was. And so I wasn't in the union, but I went to the studio. I went there. And I watched him, and at one point Bill said, have you got a pick? And I said, yeah. He said, this one here ain't no good. And I gave him one I was using. I said, will that work, Bill? Yeah, that's fine. And so he kept playing, and they recorded those tunes. Now he told me, he said, Now we're going to go out on the road, and we'll be back here in a week. And when we get back, I'll sign you up down there in the. But he said, now I got to do the Opry tonight or tomorrow or something. And he said, I want you to sing with me. You can't play, but I want you to sing with me. And so we got on the Opry because I wasn't in the union.
Sure.
And we got on there, and I was supposed to sing a song. I don't know what it was. And I didn't know what to do with my hands, you know. It felt so funny.
So how did you feel about this? You know, you'd gone down to play banjo, and now all of a sudden you're playing guitar, you're the singer.
I know.
How did you feel about that?
At first I thought, what kind of deal is this? But then, you know, I kind of felt like I was up for the challenge, you know, because I knew I could play the guitar with him. I knew I could play his rhythm. For some reason, I knew I could, you know, and so I thought, well, I'll try this, and you know, I tried it. I did like it, but me and Keith, I had my banjo with me, and we stayed in the same hotel, and we'd play together, and then we got an apartment out there, you know where 440 is.
Yeah.
I learned that apartment was right in the middle of 440.
Oh, no kidding.
It's gone now, you know. And Ralph Rensler rented this apartment out for the Bluegrass Boys.
Monroe's manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so he showed me, he'd show you anything too, Keith would. And I was interested in learning that stuff, even though I was playing guitar, you know.
But you didn't have any aspirations of being a lead singer,
no,
a guitar player before this. This all came about because of Monroe's
just like that. It came
move there when you showed up to audition. No kidding.
Yeah, craziest thing.
You fell right into it, man.
And you
it
know,
works.
I think he did that with a lot of guys.
Really?
Because a lot of those guys that were with him, you know, they could play banjos or fiddles or either one, you know.
But I have to ask, did you have a sense that Bill Keith was sort of one of the all-time greats? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I knew enough about banjo. I thought, man, he's got something there that I'd never heard before.
Yeah.
Now, Keith would tell me about Bobby Thompson, but I never paid that much attention to Bobby. You know, he said, I wasn't the first to play this style. Bobby Thompson did, you know. But he said, I learned a lot. I learned a lot from, wait a minute, Burn Boston, that guy I know, he's really good. Don Stover.
Oh, yeah.
He learned a lot of things from, like playing breaks for a song from Stover.
And Stover had some sort of melodic fragments. And Bill Keith took that and extrapolated that out into a really unbelievably complete style. I got to go hang out with Bill at his house in Woodstock.
Did you?
While he was still with us. And he's like a mad scientist of banjo, you know, and he's got all this banjo music on notation paper and all these crazy melodic runs, which there was no precedent for that, you know, other than Don Stover and a few guys who might have a few notes in a melodic style. Everyone was copying Earl Scruggs.
Yeah.
And then Bill Keith comes along, and legend has it that, you know, when he was with Monroe at the Opry, that he was sort of a spectacle, that everyone was trying to hear what this guy was doing on banjo.
They did.
So I was just curious to hear, you know, from your perspective. It seems like you guys had a good sense of what he had going on at the time.
It was new to us, all of us, you know, even to Earl.
That's
Scruggs,
so cool.
You know,
what did Earl think of that? Do you know?
Well, you know, I don't know what he thought about it, but I tell you what, Keith told me one time, he said, I'm going out to Earl's house. I want him to back me on this tuner. And he said, you want to go with me? And I said, yeah, I'll go with you. Well, I went out there with him, and that's what they talked about was
the D-tuner.
That tuner, you know. He said, now, my buddy up there in Massachusetts, his name is Bump. He's a machinist, and he made this one, this I got here. I think he had two of them on his band. They were bigger. And he had two on there that guy had made. And he wanted Earl to invest in the company.
No kidding.
That's what it was, and Earl did.
Wow,
so
that's so cool.
That's why they call it the Scruggs
Keith tuners.
Yeah, Scruggs Keith. And
for context here, we're talking about the tuning machines that go on the peg head of a banjo that allow you to tune down to a preset other note other than one that you're playing. So you basically have two notes that you can use at any time during the song. And there's classic songs like Randy Lynn Rag, Earl's Breakdown that really make use of the tuner. And there was an older version of it, the Cam tuner, which was just drilled directly into the head. But then Bill was the one who put it all in one machine.
That right.
But I never knew that. So he went down and got Earl to invest in the company. That's so cool.
Yeah, he did. Earl was making good money at that time, you know. And Earl, I'm sure Earl liked his playing too. You know, he did, because it was new for Earl, I'm sure. And Bill Monroe, I know Roy Acuff told, or he said to Bill, he said, "Where did you get this boy?" and Bill said, I tried to tell Earl Scruggs and Don Reno and all them boys they could do this. They could play every note I play on this mandolin on that banjo, and they'd say, "No, you can't."
Wow. and then along comes Bill Keith.
Yeah.
That is too cool. So, so you ultimately you were only in the Bluegrass Boys for a year.
Yeah, and Keith wasn't there that long.
And Keith was short-lived as well.
Yeah, he quit. God, I tell you, we were in. I had no idea he was going to quit. And we were in California. And Keith told me this later. I thought he gave a notice. And he said, "No, I didn't give no notice." And I didn't either. But we were in California. I think we were at the Ash Grove 2 weeks. We played it twice. One was a week one time, and then we played 2 weeks one time. And in the middle of that 2 week thing, he just got a plane, went to Boston.
You know why?
It seemed like he was in the reserves. It might have been something about that.
Oh, okay.
But he had it though with the road. He didn't like the road.
Okay.
I could tell he really didn't like the road, and that's something.
It's not for everyone.
And yeah, it ain't.
Yeah.
And I found that out with Keith, and so Monroe says to me, he says, "Do you know anybody we can get out here to play the banjo?" And I said, "Man, I don't know nobody out here." So he said, I told him, I said, "I know a guy back there in York County that he's a carny, and he worked at the carnival,
Mm-hmm.
And he come out here, but I don't know how long it'll take him to get here, He said, "You have his phone number?" And I knew it by heart because I'd played music with him before. And so he said, "Let's go call him." Well, he was living in the Hollywood Hotel, him and Bessie. And we walked down the street to a phone booth, and I went in his phone booth, and I dialed Bobby up, and it was Bobby Diamond. And I got him on the phone. I said, "This guy wants to talk to you here." And so I stepped out and let Bill walk in, and he picked up the phone and talked to him, and there's traffic going up down the street, and I couldn't hear what they're saying,
Uh-huh.
And so after a while, Bill stepped out of the machine, started walking up the street, and he didn't say a word. I said, what did he say, Bill? He said, "He'll be here tomorrow." He's going to fly out.
Wow.
And he did. He flew out there, and he finished that up, but he only lasted, I don't know. We were on our way back from California through Mexico, and we're going to play the Hootenanny program that weekend. It was, what's that guy's name, had that Hootenanny program? It traveled around, and it was in Knoxville, and we were going to play it.
Okay.
So we left and went out there, and Bobby was nowhere to be seen, this new banjo player.
Yeah.
And we got there, and we were doing a sound check. Oh, the Joe Stewart went and played banjo with us.
Okay.
Yeah. And we were doing a sound check, and I looked in the bleachers there, and I saw Bobby sitting up there. And when I got a chance after the sound check, I said, "What happened, Bobby?" He said, "He fired me."
Oh.
I don't know why, because he was a good banjo player, but they were talking. I was driving the bus back from out there, and I know him and Bill were talking about something, and I don't know what happened. That's all I knew about that.
But Monroe, he seemed like he was a pretty firm guy. If it wasn't the way that he wanted it,
Yeah.
he wasn't going to tolerate that.
Yeah.
And it also, you hear a lot about Monroe being really competitive. And in those early years, when bands like the Stanley Brothers would come along and they'd learn his songs and play them days later on their own radio program. They'd learn them off the radio, play them on their own radio show. You'd think that would be the greatest form of flattery. But Monroe has a reputation for being really competitive and guarded about bluegrass. He didn't want other people playing it. Now, this, of course, is the 60s, not exactly at the very beginning, but is that something that you experienced with Bill?
Yeah, sure. Well, it was. I knew that. He kind of thought of them as competition.
Yeah.
Other bands, and he'd run them down.
What do you mean by that?
He'd say, "Oh, they don't know how to play music. They're just screaming. They ain't singing."
Oh, wow.
People, and just anything like that. But Carlton Haney, when I was with Bill, Carlton,
promoter.
Yeah, the
Festival
promoter. He one time he went out on the road with us, and we came back in town, and of course I lived there at the Clarkson Hotel, and we parked the bus on the street and went in. Everybody went in. Everybody went in the hotel lobby and sat down in there, and Carlton was talking to Bill about having a bluegrass festival, and Bill said, "Shh, that won't work," because he thought. Carlton, he's just a big blow, because
all talk.
Y'all talk, he just come up with these big ideas, and he told Carlton that. But see, Carlton wanted to have one, but he wanted Bill with him. He wanted a partner in it, and so eventually in '65 he did. He had one, and he booked Bill to play it. And then he'd start having the bluegrass story on Sunday and have everybody that had ever been with Bill come up there from that first guy on. I remember him. He played guitar. Bill hired him when he left Charlie in Atlanta.
Okay.
I can't remember that guy's name, but he had a nephew that had a bluegrass band later on, played a mandolin. He died just recently, that guy did. Anyway, him, Clyde Moody.
Yeah,
and
sure.
The story come, and then they had Chubby Wise, and all the guys were at that festival, except Flat and Scruggs. Now they didn't want to fool with them guys,
because there was some competition there.
Yeah, Monroe didn't want nothing to do with those guys, huh?
Yeah,
and I noticed that at the Opry once. We were supposed to play in Bill Monroe's dressing room. Well, you go down a little ramp from his dressing room down to the backstage, and it was kind of dark. And I was walking with Bill. We was going to do our show down there, and Lester, I saw just as we stepped on that ramp, Lester stepped on it, going, "They're coming this way," and when they got to each other, they just stuck that nose up in there and never spoke or nothing,
Wow.
Yeah, and that's the way it was.
And that was almost 20 years after they played with Monroe in 1946 into 47, but still
that way.
The grudge holds after all those years. Wow.
And they were just as bad. They didn't want to talk to Monroe either.
Wow.
No.
Now, that makes me wonder, in terms of Monroe being competitive, but the styles sort of starting to catch on. I've heard you say that early on, bluegrass was really lumped in with country music. It wasn't necessarily its own thing. And I was wondering, was there a time when you felt like bluegrass really got established as its own genre? Or did you feel like it was that way by the time you joined the band, that people knew what bluegrass was and it sort of stood on its own musically?
Yeah. You know what? I think a lot of that happened about the time I was there because Ralph Rensler, he talked to us boys about that Bill Monroe needed a title, Of course, we were young. We didn't know what to call him, He mentioned that King of Bluegrass and whatever. And
needed like a tagline that people would know him by.
You're right.
Okay.
He said he needs a title, and so he put that on him. He put that tagline on him, or he put that title on him, And when he'd have him advertise, he'd say, "Father of Bluegrass, Bill Monroe," you know.
Yeah.
And another thing, this guy named Harry Silverstein was Bill's at Decca. He was his. That's the word I'm trying to think of now. In other words, when he'd record, Harry Silverstein was there.
Okay.
In the studio.
Producer. Okay.
Yeah. And so Ralph went up to Harry and he said, "Look, see, up into that point, all the records that Bill had put out, you know, like LPs or whatever, it didn't say, it just said Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys. And it didn't say who they were or nothing on no records. And so Ralph wanted all those guys recognized from the first time that Bill recorded a record till right up to that date.
Wow.
Because he was going to use that to advertise all these musicians that had been with him. You know, nobody knew who they were.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And Ralph Rinzler, Monroe's manager, later on is really credited with helping him to travel to new places.
Yeah.
And reach new audiences. And, you know, sort of left to his own devices, I gather that Bill Monroe was not as savvy a businessman. You know, he was just kind of trying to make ends meet, right?
That's what it was. And at the same time, too, Carlton's here with this Bluegrass Festival thing. Well, the Bluegrass guy is Bill Monroe. And he wants to tell everybody that this is the father of Bluegrass music. And so that's why on Sunday he'd bring all these people up to sing a song with him. I remember Jimmy Martin. Oh, he's dying to get out there on stage with Bill. Because I think Clyde Moody was out there, you know, and they were singing, and Clyde was a low singer, you know, and Bill was singing low. And he said, and he wasn't playing the guitar right to suit Jimmy Martin. And Jimmy said, "Carl, let me out there. They ain't playing no rhythm for that old man." No. Carlton had his hands out like it's a little old doorway there at back. No, you can't go out there yet, Jimmy. Now, no.
Because Jimmy Martin knew what he liked when it came to bluegrass rhythm guitar.
He did.
Now, was Monroe like that? Was he really instructional with his music? Did he tell you the way things were supposed to be, or did he kind of let you do your thing?
No, he did not. He wouldn't tell you nothing.
Wow.
And it's funny. He
sink or swim.
Yeah, you had to sink or swim, and you know whatever. Well, everybody that came in the band, he kind of played to them, you know, in a way.
Wow.
Or he'd sing to his lead singer too.
Yeah.
And you know, they were all different. Mac Wiseman, look how different he is from, say, Jimmy or Lester, you know.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, of course I did question him about Jimmy and Lester Flatt. I did. I was pretty bashful then. I didn't want to dig him, you know.
You mean you were asking about their styles and what you could, okay.
And I said, well, for one thing, I said to Bill, I said, "Who put these scratches on this guitar?" It's that old 39 model guitar, you know. There's scratches plumb up here like this. And he said, "That's that Lester Flatt, that thumb pick."
Oh, yeah.
Way back then, you know.
Yeah.
And he said, "I'll tell you a little story about Lester. When he come with me and him was standing closer than where me and you are. He said, when he come with me, I couldn't even hear him singing from here to there.
No kidding.
That's how soft he sang.
Wow.
And of course, he had to soften that tenor up too, you know. And so therefore,
Monroe did.
Yeah.
Monroe had to kind of come down to Lester's level.
He did, you know, and soften up, you know, and
really
to blend with Lester and a lot of the he'd have to use falsetto then, you know, instead of his natural voice on a lot of things. And he told me, he said, you know, now I'll tell you, when I hit falsetto, you won't be able to hear it. You won't tell me my falsetto from a natural voice, but I did every time.
Wow.
Because I'd sung enough to know when he went into falsetto.
Wow. That is so cool. So speaking of, you know, when bluegrass got established, early 60s, people now know what bluegrass is.
Yeah. Fast
forward to the current day. What do you think Bill Monroe would think about what's going on with bluegrass today?
You know, he mellowed a lot, and he would Look, he put up with the headhunters.
He did. He was known for softening a lot in his older years, and you hear stories about how he was sort of on the Newgrass revival. That ain't no part of nothing. But Sam, I've heard Sam say that Monroe is actually very supportive, and it's just so incredible to see what bluegrass has done, even in the time that we've been a band, the last, 19, 20 years. I mean, Can you believe what's going on with bluegrass these days?
I know. Boy, and there's so many young musicians, that when I was growing up, the only way I knew what Earl was doing, I was playing the wrong role. And I went to see Earl in 1955. Now I'd have been 16. And they were at a country music park, and I could get up close to the stage where I could see what he ran. They introduced him, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs and Foggy Mountain Boys. And Earl come, them old stages, they had a hole here and a hole here for them. Well, Earl come running out of that hole up to that microphone. He's only 35, see? It's hard to realize. He came running out of there and started that Train 45 by himself up here before anybody else got out there.
Wow.
It was so exciting,
That's so cool.
And he come out that side and Lester strolled out this side real slow. And then the rest came on. But, oh, man, I thought, this is it. This is it. And he's about the only person I listened to, was Earl in that show. But
that's it. That energy in the music, that's what, to this day, bluegrass, I think it went through a lot of ups and downs, especially during the years that you were playing and getting your career rolling. But it's a different story today.
It is. What I was going to tell you about that, too, when I saw his fingers, when I saw what his fingers were doing, I could tell that right hand. Didn't pay no attention to the left hand. That right hand's what I was interested in.
It's all about the right hand.
And I saw that forward row. I could see it. I could see that.
Yeah.
And he was using that mainly, but by that time he had already been playing stuff like Randy Lynn Rag and all this, all that good stuff.
I feel like, one of the really interesting and again inspiring things about you, I know that you're very open-minded musically, and I've seen you talk about this through the years, as bluegrass has evolved, but all the while, because there's this sort of divide in bluegrass between the traditional community and the more progressive strains of the music. Now, a lot of those streams are kind of flowing into one these days, but that really has been a thing in our music. But I feel like you've always been this great example of someone who's very open-minded. And even though the music is rooted in bluegrass, you've performed and collaborated with musicians from across such a wide spectrum. The songs are from such a wide spectrum. Where does that come from in you?
I don't know. As far as songs go, I've heard songs through the years that were not, that were not sung by bluegrass people that I liked, and I thought, well, if I ever get a chance, I want to record that song,
Didn't matter if it was a bluegrass song.
Yeah, it didn't matter what it was, if I liked the song. But another thing, Stan, my manager, he said, the thing I just think about now, I never thought about playing with a Dixieland band or those guys in New Orleans, but
Pres Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never even thought about it. But we played that jazz festival quite a few times, in New Orleans or somewhere down there.
Jazz Fest.
Yeah, played Jazz Fest, and I guess I met those guys, but that's about it. Anyway, Stan called me up and he said, those guys are doing a record and they're doing seem like they're doing it for the young jazz musicians and money to keep them going, And they want you to sing. I said, me sing on a jazz? And they want you to sing. And so I said, well, you know what? I'll try. I'll see what happens. Yeah, it does. Well, we played that festival, and those guys said, come over to our place, that Press Hall.
Yeah, Preservation Hall.
Yeah, and we'll see what it sounds like, us playing together, the two bands. And so we get over there, and the thing I remember, Ronnie said, you guys know, there you go with a name again. And it was a tune that Monroe played on the mandolin. And he had heard it when he was laid up in the hospital in Nashville. And it was a jazz tune. And, they said, that jazz guy said he wrote it, but we know different. This guy claimed he wrote this song.
Sure.
Nah, he didn't write that. What was it called? Some county. And Monroe played it.
Was it Washington County?
No, it was the only thing Bill played one chord different, but they played it, and they played it different. We didn't know what it sounded like till they did it, you know. And so Ronnie played on the mandolin, and so we recorded it eventually, that tune. And then as far as songs, we didn't know what to do. It just somebody. Well, what happened then? We thought, well, this sounds like it might work, and we both played the state fair in California at north of San Francisco.
Okay.
And they said, hey, we've got a place in South San Francisco. It was a mission before. And we got this building down there. And we could go down and record a record. And I was, okay, let's go do that.
Well, I just...
So we did. We went down there, and nobody knew what we was going to do. We just wouldn't come up with a song here and there. And
it's so cool, man.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like... It really has helped, I think, soften people's approach to what is accepted as bluegrass. Because, for so many years, everyone kind of clinging on to this version of Flatt and Scruggs or early versions of Bill Monroe, forgetting that those guys were such innovators in their own right. I mean, some of the most innovative musicians ever, really.
Yeah, and they learned stuff from those jazz guys.
That's right.
And Dixieland. You know, they did.
Yeah.
But and in that studio, I'll tell you this little story. It got late one night, and most of the people went back to the hotel room, I think. And this guy, he's a saxophone player. He's sitting over in the corner there. He's the only one left. And I thought of this song, You Don't Have to Be a Baby to Cry, old Ernest Tubb tune, And I said, what's his name? I forget his name. You want to play this with us? Yeah, I'll play it. He got up there, and he wound up kicking the song off with his saxophone,
How cool.
Yeah. And it worked so good. He's good, though. He's a good sax player,
That's awesome. Well, the first time I saw you was on stage with Phish.
Was it?
In 1999 at Camp Oswego, their festival that they threw in New York.
Yeah.
And I had really just started playing banjo.
Yeah.
Just gone off to college. And, speaking of cross-pollinating with acts from other worlds, and of course, Phish plays Beauty of My Dreams, and, they've got their sort of bluegrass influence. But what was that like being on stage in front of, 80, it was like 80 or 100,000 people that you were playing for. I mean, that must have been something.
It was like 17 bluegrass festivals in one.
Well, and what's crazy is so I think you broke a string.
Did I?
And Jason and Robbie played, Sally Gooden in front of 80,000 people, just banjo and
just
fiddle
the two of them.
while you were changing your string, And,
yeah. Well, funniest thing, we got there. I had no idea what this was about. I just knew he was playing up there.
So you didn't know what you were getting into?
No, I had no idea.
Oh, wow.
We got there, and Trey, who I got introduced to right away, Trey said, he said, you know anything we can play together? And I said, oh, God, I don't know. And he mentioned that song, Blue and Lonesome.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I know a Blue and Lonesome, but it's probably not the one you do. Because I thought they're the furthest thing in the world from Blue.
But it was, right?
It was.
It was.
Yeah. And I said, I tell you, I know one. I said, it's one that Hank Williams and Bill Monroe wrote, Yeah, that's the one. So me and him sang that.
How cool.
I don't know if we did it in B. I guess we did it in B. I'm pretty sure we did. And it really shocked me that he would know that tune,
Well, it's a testament to the fact that, you know, again, that open-mindedness and just the kind of exposure that created. I mean, I was just getting into banjo.
Yeah.
And I was into, you know, the Flecktones and all this really progressive music.
Sure.
But there you were, you know, the Del McCoury band, and I went to see your guys' set, and you played an afternoon set, which, by the way, you know, they never have other bands at their events. You know, they've been doing these events for years, and it's always just Phish. And then one year it's Phish and the Del McCoury band. So I thought, you know, I gotta go check this out. And that was how I was introduced to you guys, and probably a lot of other people as well. You know,
yeah, no kid. I'd say it's true. You know, all those people there. Yeah, our bus driver, he's an old boy from East Tennessee. He carries moonshine with him, you know, in the fruit jars, in like pint jars and quart jars, you know. And we got up there, and he got to drinking after it. Now, he didn't drink on the way up there. He drove us up there. And we got up there, and he started drinking that day. And he walked out on stage, and he called them boys fishermen. he walked out there and offered them boys a drink of moonshine. Right.
So did they take it?
I don't know if they did or not. I can't remember. Ronnie could tell you. Oh, and guess what? I had to drive the bus home all the way to Nashville. He was too drunk.
Oh, my goodness.
My driver was too drunk to drive. And so he's sitting back there with Jason. He's laughing and talking as I was coming down the road, you know. And he said to Jason, he said, play that some tune on a fiddle. And Jason said, I'll do it in A. No, don't do it in A. That's too fast.
Oh, because he was too drunk to drive because you guys were drinking moonshine with Phish in upstate New York. Wow, it's
oh God,
it's amazing the roads you've traveled. You know, it's really something. And I know I want to be respectful of your time because you're going to be on stage at the Rocky Grass Festival here in, I think, like less than 2 hours, which is absolutely amazing. But I had to ask before we wrap up. So
yeah,
you've got to have some parenting advice for the world out there, because I'm not a parent, but I know that you have raised two of the baddest bluegrass musicians the world has ever known. And I was just curious to hear, you know, how much did you guide them on that journey? Did they discover that on their own, or was that something that you were kind of helping them figure out from early on?
Well, you know, when I was, like when they were young, you know, me and the guys in my band were like in their mid-30s, you know, and when I looked at these boys, I never thought about them playing music for some reason. I just never thought that my boys would play music. But I had these instruments at home, you know. I had an old mandolin there. Wasn't too good a mandolin, and I had my old banjo, which is a 1934 40-hole archtop, Gibson, cool. You know, and I bought it from Walt Hensley.
No kidding.
That's another story.
Great banjo player.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And anyway, so Rob, he took to the banjo, and when he first started playing it, he'd lay it in his lap like this and play it left-handed, you know, with the thumb keys down.
No kidding.
Yeah, because he's a natural southpaw.
Okay.
You know? and I'd catch him with it that way, and I'd say, "Now look, if you're gonna play it, you gotta play this banjo like this." And I said, "You know, if you learn to play a one left-handed one, then you can't play nobody else's, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And so I got him going on that way, and he was only about 9, I think, when he started doing that. And he wasn't. I just wasn't serious about him playing. And Ronnie the same way. He had played violin on school, and he took up the mandolin. Well, I took him with me I played a show up in New York City, and Bill Monroe was on the show, and it was when the kids were off from school for a Christmas vacation, and him and my mandolin player's son went with us up there, and they were just kids, and maybe 12 or 13, I guess. And Bill Monroe took a liking to Ronnie, and he put his mandolin in Ronnie's lap, and he took his hat off, put it on him, and said, "Now play me something now." You know.
But he didn't play mandolin.
Yeah. No, he didn't know how to play a mandolin, you know. Of course, Bill just teased him, you know.
Yeah.
And you know what? We got back home, and this mandolin that I had before that, the banjo player, he worked on instruments. Dick Smith. I'd give it to Dick because it needed work done on it, you know, and I gave it to Dick, and I said, now, fix it, but you ain't there'd be no hurry because we don't need it. We're just going 4-piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ronnie kept telling me, he said, tell Dick to bring that mandolin home, you know, and that got him, just that little bit with Bill Monroe got him into it, you know.
Very cool.
And eventually, Dick, he'd get on Dick every time he'd seen about getting that mandolin home. He finally brought it back home when he got it done. And then Ronnie, he was trying to learn, and I would guide him a little bit, you know. I guided both of them. I'd hear him doing something. I never took a lot of time with him because I was working a day job and playing music. And but like in the evenings, I'd hear him doing something. Maybe they just be doing something, hit a note wrong or something, and I'd show them that note and then let them go, you know. And I'd never really worked with them, and then Ronnie, he got to where he could play rhythm good, and he had one more year of high school. And I told him, you can go with me this summer and play rhythm, you know, just because we had a good fiddle player and a good banjo player, and they could handle all the lead, you know.
Sure.
And so he did, and of course, and that summer, traveling in the bus, those guys, they'd get the mandolin and try to show Ronnie stuff, you know. Well, by the time the summer's over, he's taking breaks on some songs,
No
you know.
kidding.
And then I went over to Europe for a month, and Ronnie told me, he said, my principal wants to talk to you. And I said, I wonder what he's done. So I talked to the principal, and the principal said, now, Ronnie wants to go with you over there to... he told his principal about
Did
this.
he want to go to Europe?
Yeah.
And that's how you found out.
Yeah, that's what I found out he wanted. Well, he said, you know, I think he'll learn more in that month with you than he would here at school. And I thought, oh, God, I got to babysit a kid now.
It was worth it, man. It was worth it, man.
Yeah, it was.
You know, Ronnie and Rob have also become such huge inspirations, again, to me, to my band, to really everyone who's involved in bluegrass, as you are. And I just got to say a huge thank you, Del, for sitting down with me today and chatting about your amazing life in music. And thank you for the inspiration, man.
Man, I enjoyed it, Chris.
Yeah. Have a great set tonight. I'll be there.
Okay.
Okay.